Forward thinking.
Hi everyone, my name is Morin Oluwole and I'm a director and global head of luxury at Facebook. I'm very much looking forward to discussing and engaging with you today.
Hi Morin, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Excellent. I'm in Paris, so you can imagine I'm overwhelmed with joy. Obviously, not just to meet you, but the fact that there's fantastic food here and life is good. Yes, thanks very much for taking the time. So we really wanted to get to know more about you and what you do. So tell us, what's your day job today?
Wow, my day job, how do I describe it? So I mentioned I lead the global luxury division at Facebook and Instagram, of course, based here in Paris, where we have our biggest global luxury partners. And the objective of myself and my team is really to make sure that we are able to accompany our partners in their creative strategy, innovation strategy, and communication so that they can really understand what it means to engage and share their storytelling with their consumers across Facebook and Instagram. And I think this is really important because if you think about most luxury brands, they're very traditional. Many of them are, 50, even 100 years old. And so the question is, how do you translate this rich heritage, this storytelling into a digital medium, a mobile medium that we're using today? So this is very much at the core of what myself and my team do.
Excellent. So how long have you been in Paris doing this role?
Wow, I've been in Paris for almost 7 years now. Which is, it's as I say, it's quite amazing to think that I've been here for so long because it was a journey. It definitely has been an adventure.
Because you speak French now, right?
I do speak French.
So when you came,
I did not speak French when I
wow.
arrived. So I arrived in January of 2015 in Paris from New York, where I was living previously. And when I arrived, I dove right into the role because I was already working at Facebook at the time. And so I arrived here. I didn't speak French, but I had the objective of building these trusted relationships with our clients and partners. So suffice it to say, it was not easy. It was not easy from a personal point of view, from a professional point of view, because I came in and had to figure out my life, first of all. Visas, where do you live, apartments, getting your phone bill, all set up, reading letters. And so it was a really big personal challenge for me. And what I did was I had a mindset where I said, you know what, I'm here. This is what I wanted to do because I always wanted to work in luxury. How can I put myself up to this challenge to make sure it's a success? So I went into it like I was getting a degree. I worked during the day, so 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. And then in the evenings, 5 days a week, I took courses, French courses at the Alliance Française. And I also did grammar and tutoring on the weekends. So it was this a little bit of military diligence. That it was crazy. It was intense, I have to say, but it was so worth it because there's nothing like coming to a country like France where the culture and the language is such a big part of how people live and work here. And it really helped me personally, not just to feel more comfortable, but also to be more at ease when I'm working with my clients, working with, the richest, oldest luxury brands in the world. It makes a difference when you can speak their language.
Absolutely, because essentially the language is the person. It's not just.
Exactly.
It's not a transaction. It's actually you care if you
right.
learn the language.
Exactly.
So they really feel it. Now, here's an important question. You've been at Facebook before 2015. So when did you join Facebook?
Wow. I joined Facebook. It's been going on 15 years now.
So hold on. So how many employees were at Facebook when you joined?
So this was in September 2006. And when I joined Facebook at that time, we were just about 150 employees.
So you were there from obviously outside of the residence, you were there.
I was there from the
all
beginning.
The way up.
Yes.
Perfect. So I think we should stop there because I know everyone's getting excited. So that's fantastic where you are, and we are super proud of you, what you're doing for our community, because you are a beacon of hope for people trying to break into the industry. So from your perspective, where did it all start?
Where
Where
did
were
it
you
all
born?
start? Well, exactly. Where was I born? And so I'm very much proud to be a proud Nigerian.
Woohoo! Sorry.
So I was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria.
Wow.
And I grew up in Lagos with my family, and I have a younger sister as well. And I went to, this was my life. This was my culture, food, experience, family. And I grew up in Nigeria up until about 14 years old.
So that's a big part of your
It's a big
identity.
Exactly. So I grew up speaking Yoruba because I'm Yoruba and English. I went to primary school. I went to secondary school for the first couple of years. So it's being Nigerian is inherent in me. It's not, I don't even think about it. It's just who I am. And that plays a lot also into the work that I want to do, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, where I want to go when it comes to personal life and also career. So yes, I grew up in Nigeria and grew up with my family, very much an education-oriented family. So both my parents were lawyers. My dad later went into politics, and my mom was a senior executive lawyer as well. So I came up in this world where the expectation is to be a lawyer, is to be a doctor, is to be an engineer. And so anyone who knows either Nigerian or African families, we know that that's such a big part of how we're raised.
Can I jump in? Because I just heard you say something. Your mum and your dad were both professionals.
Yes.
That's not common, is it?
Well, I mean...
Obviously, I'm not revealing your age, but that's not common, because thinking about it, for both professionals in Nigeria is wow, because they're both, like, I would say, power roles.
Yes, they were both very much power roles, and so that instilled in my sister and I a certain pride, for sure, definitely a certain expectations as to who we would become or what we would do with our lives. But I think the most important aspect of the context in which I grew was the value that was placed in education and building a professional career, which has really, really made a difference as to where I am today.
So 14, you leave Nigeria?
Yes. Leave Nigeria, make a quick stop in London, even though we had lived back and forth in London as many Nigerians often do. So a quick stop in the UK where we still have family today, and then arrived in California, in Northern California. Gosh, I believe, right, exactly, about 16 or so.
So how does that work with the schooling? How did that transition work?
Oh, you have to make it work. You have to make it work. And so that's also an interesting part of the story, because you arrive into the American school system, which it takes getting used to. Because you might say, okay, well, you're coming from an English-speaking country, everything should be fine. But it was really, very tough. And the reality of it was that a lot of it had to do with our culture, the way we spoke, the food we ate. And unfortunately, and this is a bit of a painful experience, we got a lot of pushback from Black Americans. Wow. Because I can't even explain it, because, we were adapting to a new environment, adapting to a new culture, and you might think that, well, we have the same skin tone, but there was initially quite a bit of pushback, at least in school. High school is what it is. So I can't say that the transition was easy, but again, we had this sense of family, this sense of wanting to succeed beyond our circumstances, because my mom also worked 3 jobs to ensure that when we arrived in the U.S., that we were able to continue living, comfortably, and she did all that for her kids.
Wow, massive personal sacrifice. So that must be in you.
For sure.
Wow. So you go from school to college.
Yes.
And where do you decide to study? So school goes well academically.
Academically, yes.
Excellent. So mommy and daddy are happy. So our daughter has done well. So we're progressing finally. And then we now decide, okay, we need to go to college, which we call university.
Yes.
Great. So where do you choose to go?
So first, in the reflection process, I primarily wanted to stay in California. I didn't want to stay too far from home, but I wanted to be at the best school possible.
Right.
And so, and as I mentioned earlier, the expectation, which I had followed, was that I would become a doctor. We'll get to how that changed over the years. But the expectation was that I would become a doctor. And so the school that was not too far from home had a great reputation, especially when it came to their medical program, was Stanford.
Right.
So I applied to about 7 universities at the time, did the college tours, visits, etc. But Stanford was always my number one dream. I remember even before I went there, going to the Palm Drive, which if you've never been, it's the entryway to Stanford where you see the palm trees are lined on both sides of the streets, and then you see just the architecture that arrives in front of you, and it's really a breathtaking feeling arriving on Stanford's campus. So I applied, I got in, which was a very, very unbelievable moment.
Wow.
Because you have tens of thousands of people who apply each year.
And that's tens of thousands of people around the world.
Around the world. And only about 15 to 1,700 people are accepted each year.
Wow.
So it was a massive, massive accomplishment.
And when it happened, did you actually understand the gravity of where you was actually going?
Well, first, let me talk about when I got the acceptance letter, because
Yes.
it's a funny story. I had just had wisdom teeth surgery. So I got my 4 wisdom teeth, at bottom and down, taken out. So when I actually got the acceptance letter, I was at home, fresh from the hospital, from getting my wisdom teeth pulled out. So I got the letter. My mom showed it to me. I kind of understood, and then I was just put the letter away and went back to sleep. So that's the moment. That's the moment that I realized I got into Stanford. I went right back to sleep. Obviously,
How did you go back to? Oh no, but
I was on medication.
Oh,
I was in pain, and I was medicated. And so the gravity of being accepted didn't really come maybe a day or 2 later, after all the pain had worn off, and I was like, wow, I'm going to Stanford. That's going to be my alma mater.
And then Stanford at that time, what year did you get accepted?
So I joined. Stanford was 2002.
So this is just after the .com bust.
Yes, exactly.
So that means, and then so the people that come out of Stanford and the reputation on the side that you haven't even entertained yet, wow. So you're literally positioned, but obviously you don't know where you're actually positioned because you're thinking about medicine.
Yeah, I was thinking about medicine. So, little did I know that there was this phenomenon that was happening outside of my world that would shift literally the direction of my career. So I went into Stanford. This was September 2002, and my objective was going to be a doctor. Simple, pure, done. Well, that didn't quite happen as I thought, for a number of different reasons. And I remember the deciding moment was when I was interning at a hospital in the Bay Area in the emergency room. And I was working, doing a couple of shifts per week from 12 midnight to 8 a.m. Not easy. So I saw a lot.
I can't even get it.
Yeah. And I remember, because this was in my beginning of my 3rd year of university, and I remember driving home. It was 8 a.m. It was like rush hour traffic, but going in the opposite direction. And I said, you know what? This is not what I want to do with my life. And it's a crazy thing to realize, to accept, especially when you thought that was what you wanted to do for so long, and then to figure out, oh, what am I going to do then?
So what was it that you was like, this is not for me?
And some of my best friends are doctors. It just wasn't my passion.
Right.
And you can't, deny nature. When you have a passion, you have a passion. And for me, it had been more so an obligation. And doctors do great work. And I think if you're going to spend that much time, you have 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school. And if you do a specialty, then you have 2 to 4 years to follow. So you have 10 to 12 years. And if you're not passionate about that subject and you spend 10 to 12 years studying, it's a bit of a shame.
How did that conversation go at home? Because I'm assuming you didn't know what you wanted to do.
I did not know what I wanted to do.
And that's the challenge sometimes, isn't it?
And
when you can't say I've got a plan.
Exactly. And so, well, first of all, I didn't tell my mom until I had at least the semblance of a plan in place. So I didn't just tell her on a whim that I wasn't going to go to medical school anymore. But that was where I started to, kind of do the process of elimination.
Right.
What am I interested in? What fuels me and what gives me energy? And so I had an inkling that I was more so maybe kind of an economic/business-minded person versus a medical-oriented person. And so then I had to figure out practically what that would mean for my future at Stanford, because I was on a wonderful scholarship program. I was a Bill Gates Millennium Scholar, Wow. So it was a
Wow.
program created by Bill and Melinda Gates to support underrepresented youth who are attending prestigious universities. So they were essentially funding my entire college education. So I need to make sure that I was not jeopardizing
Yeah, of
this
course, 'cause it's the
prestigious
biggest
award that I had received, and then also figure out what direction in which I wanted to go. So the first thing I did was, from a practical point of view, I kept my major. It was human biology and major and Spanish minor.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also applied for a master's program at Stanford.
Once you finish.
No, while I was still doing my undergrad, I started my master's at Stanford.
Wow, that's
yeah. So I'm an underachiever, you can see.
Yes.
But it was an opportunity for me to dive into different realms that were still relevant for me. So the first master's I did was in sociology, which is what got me to Facebook. We'll get there. And then the second one eventually was a business degree from Columbia University in New York.
Right.
And so that got me to really build that rich background that I wanted. All that to say is that for me, it was kind of the beginning of the turning point where I was open to accepting change, open to accepting that the plan that I had in place is not necessarily the reality in which I live. And you can see, I've lived in the US, in New York, in London, etc., and now I live in Paris. And none of that came from a plan that I wrote.
That's right.
It came from instincts, because you have to have good instincts first.
And I really want to tap into that, because you sound like a very mature 18-year-old. Because the decisions and the conversations you're having with yourself, you must have been very secure. Because I'm thinking at that age, I wasn't ready to make that kind of decisions. And I know many people are not, because you're basically saying, yes, I'm not doing medicine, but I'm not going to say, I'm just going to travel the world and, live my life.
Yeah.
Actually, you've made like conscious decisions to say, I'm going to do this. And you did the process of elimination. Where did that come from? Because that's a very mature thing to do.
It is a mature thing to do. And, it's kind of the notion of fake it till you make it, because no, I was not a mature 18-year-old, because first I arrived in a university environment where, to be very honest, I'm surrounded by kids who have been groomed to enter and be successful in this university experience. So these are trust fund kids who have gone to the best prep schools in the world, and that was not my experience as a child. And then from a diversity point of view, let's be clear, it's very, very limited in terms of Black Africans and also overall Black students. And so I was very much surrounded in classes where I was one of very often. So that was my experience. So it's actually quite intimidating.
Wow.
Very intimidating. But again, coming from my family background, is there's no option to fail.
Yeah.
There's no option to fail.
It's not in the dictionary.
Not in the dictionary. I don't know that word. So that was not an option for me. And I think that is that motivation, and just seeing also how my mom just worked to make sure that my sister and I would be in the best position for success. I couldn't just go back to her and say, it didn't quite work out. Sorry, let's try something else again another time.
So you put your head forward and you say, right, we're going forward. So you're doing your degree, and then you're also doing the master's as well at Stanford or at Brown?
At Stanford. So I have two masters. Did the first one at Stanford, and so I completed that. So I ended up doing a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in 5 years. And so I had my initial graduation in 2006, and then 2007 was the second master's graduation.
Excellent. Yeah. So from there, family are happy. You have a plan now.
Alors, no. Then, I was doing consulting when I was doing my master's, because that gave me an opportunity to be in a professional workplace and to really understand what it meant to be a strategic decision maker.
How did you get the consulting?
It was an internship. So it was that Stanford, thankfully, having the Stanford network. And so it was with the career center at Stanford, where they had an opportunity to have us apply for different internships. And so mine was in strategy consulting.
Good. So let's speak on that, because you're probably the fifth or sixth person we've interviewed, and everyone keeps saying at university they had internships. Please tell the people, why is internships important if you can get them?
Of course. So internship, it helps you just figure out how to apply what you're learning in school into the professional world. Right. That's the first thing. Second thing, when you finish for a college degree or your master's degree, you're going to already have an experience of working in a professional environment. This is unbelievable because if you're 21, 22, 23, and you already have 4 summers, or mine was during the year, of internships, that means that you already have a step ahead of someone who didn't spend that time over the summer working as an internship. And then let's be real, very concretely, I also finance a part of my studies.
Right.
So an internship means that I can pay for my share of what I need to pay for my Stanford education.
Yeah, which is not cheap.
Which is not cheap. An Ivy League education is not cheap.
Awesome. So you do the master's graduation, you throw the hat, everybody's happy, no plan.
I don't know.
What happens
It's I talked about instinct just a bit ago. So there's chance, and then there's instincts to follow that chance to make it into something more.
I like that.
And I had both, and I'm thankful about that. But it was also my instinct that really helped. One of my friends, who was a black gentleman, his name's James Mitchell. We actually were friends since our first year at Stanford. He reached out to me, and he said, "Hey, I just joined this company, Facebook, and we're hiring. What do you think? Do you want to apply?"
I wish I was you. That is the best phone call to get.
And so that's the best phone call to get. But then again, I had to follow through on that. And then recognize that this was kind of an interesting company to work for. So I applied.
So when he called and he said Facebook, did it actually resonate? Did it mean anything?
It resonated only in the sense because at that time, so we're talking about 2005, 2006. So Facebook had just been created. So it was a tool that we college kids used. So we had a Facebook to send pictures and messages and post on each other's walls. Yeah. So it wasn't like I was thinking about a strategic multi-billion dollar company.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was very much its infancy.
And it wasn't public.
And it wasn't public. So it was really, truly a startup. So that's why, yes, it resonated, but the potential I could never have imagined or predicted that we get to this point.
So you apply, you get the role.
So I apply. Not only did I get the role, it just happened with the flash, I applied, I had an interview, I believe maybe it was a Tuesday or something like that. So I interviewed with 3 people at Facebook at the time. I'm driving home, I get the call that I have the job. So it was that quick.
Wow.
Not only that, I started working 1 week later. So it just happened in a flash.
So I'm just thinking, what would be going through your mind? Because I guess you think you've passed, you don't have a plan, but then when you graduate, the first thing is I need to get a job, I need to start paying back loans if you've got student loans, etc.
Yeah.
So in your mind, you've got a job. Was it just, okay, I've got a great job, well, I've got a job at a company, tick box, or was there any competition? Was there any other roles you were applying for at the time?
So at the time, it really, yes, there were other roles I was applying for. For me, again, I thought that this would be interesting at least. If nothing, it would be interesting to work in this company that was such a big buzz at the time on university campuses. So for me, it was an experiment. It was an experiment to see what this could be.
Right.
And so I started working at the company. Again, we were 150 people, so very small startup. Not only that, the average age was about 25, 26. So we were young. We were kids. We were just starting to live and build life.
Yeah, because you don't know. No one has a big consulting background. There's no 40-plus-year-olds or no, there's no mom and dad kind of figures.
Yeah.
So you're literally designing your life.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And the interesting thing about it is, which I don't think you can ever reproduce this kind of experience, we worked together. We were also very much friends because, again, we're all young, kind of freshly out of university, out of college. And then we also were friends. And so it really was this extremely immersive experience. And Facebook, for quite a period of time, became a very big part of my life. And so that's where I think that I was able to not just immerse myself into the experience, but then also think about what I could do, how I could contribute to this company to better myself and to evolve and grow in my career.
So you're at Facebook now, you join, you've been inducted, it's now become family, because obviously I'm assuming it's a lot of hours at the beginning.
Yeah.
It wasn't a clock in, clock out.
It was all consuming.
So you're in it now. What's your first role?
My first role, I was a community operations specialist. And so our objective was to make sure that people could sign up, log in, and use Facebook quite purely.
Right.
Because the goal there was growth, getting as many people to on board on Facebook as possible. So it was, it was entry level role, as my experience merited at the time. But what was important for me and what I've really done over time was to try to figure out what the strategy of the company is. And this applies to any company, not just to Facebook where I was. Figure out what's the strategy of the company, what are they focusing on, and how can I put myself in the right position to be part of that.
Okay, got it. So there's no official job description. You're kind of learning
really
on the job and figuring out.
Yeah.
And obviously people are adding to your team or your department every month.
Yeah.
Was it growing quite quickly?
Yes, it was growing very quickly, but for me, and this is something that I value even today as well, I've very much been a relationship person.
Right.
Meaning for me, it's about building trusted relationships, also building a strong network of people who support me.
Right.
And I didn't just focus on my narrow, this is my day job and that's all I'm going to do. I was also curious. I was curious to understand what are the different projects that people are working on. And then also maybe even spending time to help them, because you never know how that's come back to be beneficial for you. And that's how I've evolved in the company.
Right.
So
you didn't just sit down and say, I'm here.
Yeah.
Life is good.
Right.
I've got stock options then, all that good stuff, even though no one knows what it is.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you've got all of these perks and benefits. But like you said, some people could have just said, oh great, I'll stay here for 25 years and let's see if this works out. And obviously as things progressed, and obviously they went public and they got much more, the user base increased, you can easily just say, I'm good, I can just stick with this one space and kind of cruise. But you didn't decide to do that.
No, I didn't do that. And for me, it was important not to do that. So I've worked in about 4 or 5 different departments in the company. First in operations, then product marketing. And so I was really part of one of the first teams who worked with our engineers and our sales teams to help build the right products for advertisers. I shifted over to media partnerships because it was really interesting to me how we could work with brands, luxury and lifestyle brands, for example, to help them communicate and help them figure out what it means to just be digital. Because at that time, digital didn't really mean much. And so it was really the first step that we were building. And one thing that's important for me is that almost every job that I've had, I've been the first one to do it, meaning it was a job creation.
Right.
And so that's the frame of work, that's the mind frame that I have, meaning I'm a builder and I like to build order out of disorder, for example. And again, I did the product aspect in California, and then I decided I wanted to develop business experience. So I moved to New York, where I was the chief of staff of who's essentially our CMO at the time, running our entire advertising business. And that was an eye-opening
When you say the
experience.
entire, we're talking global.
Global, yes. So she's Carolyn Everson. Today she's still one of my very strong mentors and really supported me in my growth professionally. So I was her right-hand person to really help her concentrate on building our strategy for our advertising business with our most important partners and advertisers around the world. That is not a small job. And you talk about all-consuming. I worked all the time, but I wanted to, and I knew that being immersed in that space where I was young, I was 26, but I had the privilege and the honor of being in meeting rooms with the CEOs of the biggest companies in the world, thanks to the work that I was doing with her. That's not something you take for granted.
Absolutely. And whatever the ask is, it's like, yes, you can do it. There's no such thing as, I just want to hang out with my friends this evening.
Yeah, no, and I sacrificed, and it's a very real experience. I missed birthday parties, I missed, events, time with friends. But I knew that this job, and it was a time period, it was 3 years, but I knew that it was something that was important to be able to catapult me to the next place where I wanted to be.
So, want to put a pin in, because you said so much, and I'm even trying to process everything you're saying. So and this is the thing I guess we need to think about. So from a female, being a female, black female in Facebook when it was 150 people, culturally, how was that for you?
I went into it, the way that I approach kind of any situation is I am who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm me. Take me as I am, and I'm not going to pretend to be anyone else.
Great.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's what the experience was. Yes, of course, I was very conscious that I was either one of or the only or one of few people who looked like me, and there's also a certain pressure, as you can imagine, to perform better in order to ensure that there are no doubts about your competence.
Yes. So you work harder.
So you work harder. And I did. But again, one thing that I was very proud of who I am and where I came from. And it was also an opportunity to give a lot of my colleagues who are now also very good lifelong friends to understand an experience that's different from their own. And that's the reality, is that many of them had not spent a lot of time with someone who looked like me, definitely not someone who was from Nigeria. And so it was also an opportunity for them to also broaden their experience and broaden their knowledge of the world around them.
From obviously hearing your story, it's so much good stuff that I want to pick out, but I know we have to go because gotta go, guys. But I think it's really important to leave people with something. So from your perspective, do you have any, 3 top tips or things that you would say, if you're going to progress in your career or advance, these are the things that you would do?
The first thing is relationships and people.
Wow.
Because people will build you up. And developing relationships with people where they can talk about you positively when you're not in the room is something incredible.
Wow.
And so for me, the mentors that I've had, the relationships that I built, it's not about the networking to try to get ahead. For me, it's really been about deep and true relationships. Of course, and trying to learn as much as possible from senior leaders, executives, and more learned people around me. But the people in whom you invest and also who invest in you are primordial to any kind of career that you want to develop.
So I need to delve into that because everyone mentions this that are in roles like yourself. So what's a how? How do you do relationships that are for work?
Yeah.
Or start with work, but then like you said, it now becomes a bit deeper. What kind of things?
Well, that's the thing. It becomes deeper, so it becomes personal. And so this is where you might start off discussing with someone about a project that you're working on and how to optimize it. But then you also learn that, they just got married. And so maybe you send a nice letter or a nice message or a gift when they got married. You take note of what's going on in people's lives. And you know that people are more than their titles. And so I think it's this intentional interest in other people's lives and also in making a connection with people, because we all have connections. We might look different, here and there, but we all have something in common. And so trying to find that human connection between people is really important.
Cool.
Because people are going to support you. There are some people who are not going to support you, and that's fine. It's okay. We're all going to run into those people, who are not there for your best interest. But from a fundamental point of view, and I take pride in this also as I manage a team, it's really important to focus on that.
Excellent.
People and relationships.
So people and relationships, number 1. Any more tips for us?
Number 2 is to remain curious. Because if you remain curious, you question what exists, you look at the potential of what you can do and what you can develop and what you can contribute to. For example, I have my day job. And I work hard at it, but I'm also curious and interested in different topics, and I spend time in that. And especially when I think about the future that I want to build for myself, it's very much about bringing all this knowledge that I've learned from Silicon Valley, from tech, digital, and luxury, and applying that back home.
Right.
Back home.
Tell us about that.
Back home in Africa, and to really harness the opportunity that already exists, especially when it comes to supporting our fashion, our luxury, and our digital communication sectors in Africa, and of course in Nigeria as well. And so this is where, as I think about what comes next, this is where I want to build toward. And it's something that happens when you get a little bit older. Maybe it's a life cycle. Maybe it's as you're thinking of, what you're leaving for the next generation. For me, it's been a question of, okay, I've been fortunate, but I've also worked hard to have this knowledge. How can I support those who have the same or similar experiences as me? Because they don't have a lot of people to whom they can look up to, to say, okay, I'm going to learn from this person. I'm going to bring my talent back home. I am focused on working on investing, working on being an advisor, private equity funding, board of directors, and also in the next evolution of my career, I definitely know that I want to be not just physically present, of course, but also put my quote unquote money where my mouth is and support the development of these sectors in Africa.
So give us a summation, because you're there now. So tell us, what are you building? Are you allowed to say, or is it top secret?
Well, there's some things that you keep, you keep to yourself because you can't just give away everything. But it's what I mentioned, that I'm working actively to support and advise startups. Right. Working with private equity funds as well to really identify and the next potential.
And we're talking about digital fashion, luxury. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine. You don't give me any more. That's fine.
Yeah.
I will ask off camera.
Just stay tuned. There's more to come. Stay tuned.
So there's more. There's bigger and better things.
Yes.
So I think because of time, because I feel like I could talk to you all day, but I feel like hearing your story, it's so powerful that you started in Nigeria, but starting in Nigeria wasn't a setback, it was a setup. Some people say, but you started in a quote unquote third world country, but actually you really didn't, because both of your parents were educated, which meant you now had a standard already set for you. And then I now hear you now transit to another country, you have challenges, it's a culture shock. And even in, like you said, the community, the black community, you don't really have the welcome that you expect. But then irrespective of that, I feel like there was this solid person that just says, I am going to do this irrespective of what is going on around me. Is that you? You just say, irrespective of what it looks like, once you know what it is, you just go?
Yes, there's definitely a fundamental aspect there, but I have to say, and this is going to, it's your last question, the third point is to not forget about your personal life.
Wow. Even though you worked every hour.
Even though you, and I say this from the perspective of someone who sacrificed a lot in their personal life. Sometimes it really was worth it, and I think it's important to know when to make those choices. But to realize also that it's a choice.
Right.
And I think having a bit more maturity and being able to sit back a bit more, it's important to ensure that you are a fulfilled person 360.
Right.
You're going to have moments where it's a grind, and that is fine, and that is life. But it cannot be a grind all the time. The human body literally is not configured to
work and not
rest. Because you have cortisol, your cortisol levels, they augment they increase when you're in a stressful situations, and then they need to go back down, for example. So you can't always be in a stressful situation and forget your personal life, personal balance, your relationships, your loved ones. And for me, I would say my third big learning lesson is to figure out is to ensure that I don't forget that and don't forget to prioritize that, because in a number of periods or situations where I just put my head down and went through it. But I also came to a point where I was like, whoa, what's most important for me?
And time has gone quick,
right? And time goes quickly. And as a woman, time goes quickly, and it's important to ensure that you also fulfill. That doesn't mean leaving your career behind, but you also fulfill the personal aspect, personal relationships, and also your personal aspirations.
Because like you said, you're in a male-dominated environment, so all the guys around you, no one's saying, "Oh, I think I'm going to have a child now," or "I feel like I'm going to get it. I'm ready to get it." They just talk. They can just focus on work, and they can, not in a bad way, but they can pick up a wife anytime they want. Whereas a lady, it's a different situation.
Yeah,
you really have that. You have to have an intentional choice. You have to choose.
Exactly.
And it has to be planned.
Yes, and it's important to do that because it doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by accident, because if you're not intentional about it, you can spend all your time working, then you wake up, you're like, wait, what do I have to show for it? Or then, and it's not about taking, I don't believe it's necessarily about taking a step back. It's about enriching yourself when it comes to your career and making sure that you have the right career that responds and supports your life versus you only responding or supporting your career or the company in which you work. It has to go both ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Excellent. These tips have been great. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I look forward for part 2 when that comes really soon. So guys, you've heard it here first. Morin Oluwole has a fantastic story, and she's doing amazing things, and there's even more to come. Imagine. So definitely stay tuned, and we will see you soon.
For